So there are certain lanes that are borderline unlaneable, but you still have to get the most out of the lane. So we're going to go a little bit blast of the past, and we're going to look at a technique that really dates back to tri-laning and how offlaners used to get XP back then. And that technique is dragging the wave. So what dragging the creeps entails is that you've decided that it is too difficult for you to lane. The enemy +1 or +5 are way too strong and you just do not want to take the excess harass. So what you're going to want to do is drag the enemy creeps into a position where it is much more favorable for you to get CS. Now the indicator that I like to use in which the enemy's creeps will start like drawing aggro to you is this lamppost if you're playing for the dire. One of the things you're going to want to avoid is dragging aggro into the small camp, because if the creeps drag aggro, or if the enemy support actually manages to pull aggro of those creeps, you intrinsically just gave them a free pull, and that is kind of the last thing that you want to be doing. Now, once you drag the creeps up toward the river, you bring them to the right, and you stand outside of your tower range, and you wait for your creeps to show up. Once your creeps show up, you can now safely last it without getting the normal amount of harass that you normally would be getting if you were closer toward the enemy tier 1. So you just get the last hits within the safety of your tier 1 tower, and you can freely play the lane. Once you've done this, not only will this bring creep aggro closer toward your tower for the next wave, you can easily just keep repeating this until the enemy support starts chasing you away from these dragon pulls. Now, showing a little bit of a more practical version, I'm going to show you they can actually even do it with summons. A perfect character to do this on is actually Beastmaster, who's been kind of rising in popularity. You can just summon a boar while your main character stays in lane, and your boar can also drag aggro. So you just aggro in the same place. Again, I like to use the lamppost, bring the aggro down toward the river, and you can try to meet them in the exact same place. Now, the benefit for Radiant is actually that there are two places to do this. So let's show the first one like we did last time for the Dire. You run them up the staircase, and you basically start training them around and waiting for your second, or actually in this case, your third creep wave to arrive. Now, most of the time, it's going to be a little difficult. I might mess this up with the boar, so we're switching it back to the main character. We brought back the main character because I'm a little bad at micro, but same thing as before, we managed to bring creep aggro into a place that's much more favorable for us. Now, the second way to do it for Radiant, and kind of the more classical way, there is a way to do this on Dire, but I actually don't recommend it because I think it's too much of a walk to go up through your triangle. So we're going to drag aggro like we normally do, but this time we're not going to meet aggro with our creep wave in front of our tier 1 tower. We're going to take it even more safely, and we're going to go for an even longer walk, where we're going to take it behind our tier 1. This makes it really difficult for the enemy supports to even come within XP range, because outside your tower, there's still some leeway in which they can potentially harass you. The important thing is you have to provide vision up the high ground on that staircase. I'm going to make my path a little easier. Going to cut down this tree. And now I've met creep aggro behind my tier 1. In this case, if the enemy support wants to run all the way back here and to harass you, that would probably be the correct thing to do, but by all means welcome them to do so. Because the next creep wave is also, again, going to meet somewhere closer toward your tier 1, because now it's heading toward us as well. And this basically sets you up for a lot more safer farm than possibly taking it outside of your, or in front of your tier 1. Now, several things to note. This technique only works on every wave after the first one, because the first one doesn't draw any aggro. Things that you're going to have to watch out for, I kind of mentioned it earlier. If the enemy support is just tailing you, one thing that's going to be really annoying is if they manage to pull aggro by the small camp. So not only does this, again, give them a free pull, but this innately just stops your drag, and that is the last thing you want happening. So one quick tip that you can do to avoid this is you should probably sentry ward the small camp, because if this is a technique that you think you're going to be employing in this laning stage, you don't want to be giving the enemy support free pulls. And another thing in particular about one character, Bane, which is a pretty popular support, Bane has Nightmare, and one of the unfortunate scenarios about Nightmare is that when you pull aggro, if Bane is to Nightmare you, the enemy creeps immediately lose aggro. So this is kind of a common exception in which you're not going to want to be doing this too readily against an enemy Bane unless you already see him playing very aggressively in the lane. So hopefully this gives you a good summary on how to use this technique and what you're trying to do and avoid, and you can apply this to your game, because the more techniques that you know in order to get XP and gold out of lanes that you normally would get nothing out of, the more likely you are to come back from poor laning stages and end up winning games.